This week's 48 Hours digs into the investigation of a former Idaho state trooper suspected in the mysterious death of his wife. Dan Howard says he found his wife dead in the bathtub in February of 2021, and he told deputies she took her own life. But investigators decided to take a closer look at him after finding certain evidence at the crime scene. Peter Van Sant reports.
This 911 call sent deputies from Kootenai County in northern Idaho to the home of a distraught former state trooper, Dan Howard.
It was a gunshot.
With their body cameras rolling, deputies captured Dan telling them what happened on that cold February night in 2021.
She's in the bathtub.
Upstairs, deputies found 48-year-old Kendy Howard's body in the bathtub with a gunshot wound to her head. Dan Howard told them she had taken her own life, but investigators were suspicious. Deputy Miranda Thomas says too many things seemed out of place.
I went into the house and found a packed duffel bag. Was someone planning on leaving the house?
In the laundry room, the dryer was still turning, full of clean bath towels and mats.
Having a dryer running at midnight, very odd because I don't do laundry at midnight. Sure, you could.
And despite the shock of finding his wife dead, Dan Howard appeared to have recently showered, changed his clothes, and applied fresh deodorant. Detective Sergeant Ken Lalaton said Howard seemed to have a story he planned to share.
Almost scripted in a way?
Yeah, definitely scripted.
And there were other challenges. Authorities did find the gun in the tub, but there were no prints or DNA connecting it to Howard. There wasn't enough on the scene to arrest him. Still, authorities were not about to give up.
Dan knows things that most normal people, ordinary people don't know.
Things like what?
Things like killing someone and staging it to look like a suicide.
And Peter Van Sant joins us now here in studio. Good morning, Peter. Talking about that dryer, you mentioned that it was going at midnight. What did investigators find there?
Well, what was fascinating about that, so you saw the hysterics in the 911 call and also when deputies first arrived. Imagine going inside that house and what you hear is the sound of a spinning dryer, how odd that would be. But they had the perception to take a photograph. It had 6 minutes left on it, and that became significant because sometime later, detectives were able to determine that at the time he made that 911 call with all of the emotion and hysterics, he was actually doing laundry. So it called into question whether that was a performance that they were listening to on that 911 call.
What else made them suspicious about Dan Howard?
Well, Kendy was shot in the head, and she was in a bathtub, but there was surprisingly little blood there. That undermined this notion of a suicide and also raised the possibility for investigators, was she possibly killed somewhere else and placed in the bathtub?
Wow. So they weren't able to make an arrest immediately. I think it took over 2 years for them to make an arrest. How come?
Well, he's a former Idaho State patrolman. They had to get all their ducks in a row. But the biggest obstacle was the medical examiner did not rule this case a homicide. The ME said it was an undetermined manner of death. So they had to go out and find medical experts to actually challenge their own medical examiner in a trial, which is fascinating. You have the defense attorney saying, well, if the medical examiner says this isn't a homicide, you members of the jury, you shouldn't either.
And Peter, you made another observation during that video when police arrived. The husband didn't seem that upset.
No, we were told by the people who actually went into that house with all that sobbing, there wasn't a single tear.
Wow. So revealing.
Lots of signs, and we'll find out how this all ends.
It's a dramatic trial, and it's a terrific tale.
Good to see you, Peter. Thank you. And you can watch Peter's report, The Bathtub Murder of Kendy Howard, on 48 Hours tomorrow night at 10, 9 Central, here on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.